awake? I can feel the energy.
It's standing room only. They waited for you.
Really? Well, I have something to say because this never happens in life. This is pure nirvana. I live on Chambers Street, which is 4 blocks north of here, and I work on Hudson and Canal. I feel like I died and went to heaven because no subways, no trains, no planes, no taxis, just pure old good feet. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Right, in a chat.
And a chat. Thank you.
Yeah. So Lori, you were, as Colleen just said, you were recently promoted to CEO of Global Brands at Havas.
Right.
For organizations of global brands located in North America. And what's interesting to me is, as you've been published about your values and your leadership approach, you've created these villages. And the language that's used, and we've been talking about creative and emotion for the last couple of days, but the language that's used in every case is it's passionate, it's emotional. You're talking about the humanity of groups working together. Where does that passion come from, and how do you get your ideas for how to put these teams together and get people to work in completely different ways?
So, first of all, thank you for having me today. As some of you may know, I'm a board member and a big belief in what the importance of research and data is in our industry, and most importantly, inside of what we would call advertising agencies. So Havas's methodology and what I implemented in the last 3 years is to take content, creative, media, data, et cetera, and physically move them together. That sounds very easy. From a real estate perspective, it was incredibly successful. We built these villages that are connected through common staircases. Simple as that, to force humanity to speak to each other. And in our industry, and after just listening to this panel, it is probably the most important element that has to happen, because content without insights and insights without content is really kind of the challenge of where we sit today. It was the belief of Yannick Bolloré, our global CEO, to do this, not just in North America, but across the globe. So the North American efforts were kind of the last ones, so we took all the learning from around the globe and applied it into North America. That being said, it's become really the nucleus of training. We have a very, very aggressive intern program we take around the globe, because the epicenter of what we're doing in the globe happens in New York. I'm a big believer of that. I see David Polchak sitting over there, and understanding we just got done with the upfronts. And the common or the golden thread of the upfronts was all about data and research, and where does that sit? So it comes to life in the villages, and it's an exciting proposition right now in regards to not just employee recruitment, but client recruitment. And how does that really transcend into a CMO's language, is what we just heard, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So building on that, you've integrated creative, media, and planning, those functions together. How do you face clients that haven't done the same thing?
Delicately. And that's a really interesting point, because we talk about it, but until you live it, and until you breathe it, and until you actually do it, it's very, very different. So I'm gonna cite one organization that I think is somewhat at the forefront on it, and working with Fidelity, because if you think about what they actually do, it's in one-to-one relationships. It doesn't matter where you are in their funnel. It is all about relationships, and they've integrated that way, and so have we. We've custom built solutions for clients, but always at the core of data and insights. And as I like to say, the non-P&L people of the infrastructure, right? Really just pay them to think.
Do you take one solution to the clients, or do you try to customize it to the different departments?
Completely customized, right?
Okay.
Which is part of the philosophy of an integrated village, is that it's seamless, so you don't really know where you're taking from the talent, right? And I think there's risk with this model, because
like what? What are some of the risks?
Talent.
Okay.
In particular.
You're looking for really different kinds of people. What kind of skills are you looking for? Is it people talk about art and science, left brain, right brain?
I don't think we have a cookie cutter type of approach. I really believe that recruiting right now and taking from outside the industry, and I know having representation from what I would call pure play consulting from Deloitte, Accenture, those models existed long before the model that what we're doing right now. So it's probably more of an imitation approach to how we're, building from a talent perspective. But I also see that the talent is transferable, right? Because if you think about the creativity of our business is just not in what we would call, creative agencies. It sits inside traditional media agencies and/or content development. And I really see that clients are starting to look at the opportunities moving fluidly across resources. But I think it's an exciting time. You and I have been in this business long enough, right? I started my career in Detroit working at Campbell Ewald for a legend, and I only did one thing, and that was newspaper. Listen to me, newspaper planning, right? And you were trained in a certain skill, so you swam in your lane, and for right now, there's none of that happening in our industry at all.
Yeah, one product, one division, one boss.
Not anymore.
Right.
General Mills was like that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
Cheerios,
Big matrix.
only Cheerios, right?
Yeah, brand management.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, so you spoke about it a few minutes ago in terms of the importance of data and your passion about research and data. And yesterday afternoon, we had a very, very moving presentation of the Erwin Efron Award to Erwin Gottlieb, who has been someone also really passionate about research and lifting up researchers on their shoulders. And I invited, our audience this morning to find their Erwin Efron. So for some folks, it's Lori Hiltz. Where does that passion for data, for the researcher, where does that come from? And talk a little bit about some experiences that you had with that researcher on your right hand or your left hand.
So I started in the industry working on a brand called Chevrolet. And if you think about this is 30 years ago, where the model that we're pretending to have today existed 30 years ago at an agency in Detroit called Campbell Ewald, where media and creative and the idea of data back then was employee registration. It's kind of the birthplace of JFK, right? So that long ago, someone had the vision to say that we all live together. Then we had a couple companies like Nielsen coming around that sold us the currency and how we learned about television viewing and what was really happening. And there was a legend back then, a guy named Bernie Guggenheim, who was a scientist and smoked the pipe in the office, right?
We had one, Gove Laybourne.
Yes, and Bernie was
smoker.
my Erwin, and that before you did anything in the agency, it didn't matter if you want to be a creative director, you better understand and have some insight about the consumer. It sounds so simple, but we all bypass the basic steps. And now I think one of the pieces of rigor that we have inside of Havas is extensive training. So you understand what the heck you're talking about when we put you in front of a client, right? And that there's a much more robust platform right now of partners that can help us. And what I would call proprietary relationships move across the board. And to me, that is fundamental of moving forward. And you can start at the top of the pyramid if you want with Apple and Facebook and Google, but it's really when you get down into the roots of our industry, and some of you that are sitting in this room that have brought us some technologies and opportunities that have changed relationships with clients and business outcomes, to be fair. That's why they hire an agency, is to change the business trajectory.
So we're inviting that's really interesting and helpful, and also looking back, like what's old is new again, right?
Right.
Mark Addick said that yesterday. So as you look to how to take the data and translating, we say translating truths into traction, into specific action. And I know when you first had your previous job 3 years ago that you were promoted to, when I first met you and you joined the ARF board.
Gail met me because the brand new Havas hadn't paid the ARF dues, and she came to visit me. I've never forgotten that conversation, because you got to remember that an organization like this needs dues-paying members, right? And I was so mortified as the new CEO. I went right to the CFO, and he said, well, why do we need to belong there? And I gave my litany of reasons. And even today, the belief, because there is a new CEO sitting there, is about the importance of the infrastructure of our industry supporting organizations like this. And to have this kind of turnout at 4:20 on a Tuesday afternoon when it's the most beautiful day it's Flag Day, and we're all in here.
They don't know that.
They don't know that, that's right. But, it's a testimony to, I think, the belief of why the ARF is important to agencies, and it validates us as partners to our clients, right? There's so much insight and so much content that you provide to us, and it becomes our own currency of membership and how we work with clients. So I'm excited even from a global perspective right now, because I do think there's a lot of what we do here in this organization that could be applied across the globe.
Right, so you got this new promotion, and you had this posse of data scientists, right?
Yep.
And you were kind of like, go, I've got these guys, like these science guys, and I got to figure out how to, there were a bunch of them, right?
I got a bunch of really smart, I don't know what the hell they're talking about half the time, but they're really smart.
Right?
Yes.
But your approach to this was so interesting. I want you to speak about that a little bit, because you said, I went to them and I said, you tell me what the questions are.
Yeah.
So how did you get, that's like flipped around, instead of, okay, you're a bunch of smart guys, tell them, give me the answers. And don't take too much time doing it, which is what management usually does.
Well, a little bit about what I see the future of agencies right now is that, and it was ironically, there was no dress rehearsal here about the panel before with Colleen, but it was
kind of perfect, right?
But the purchase funnel's pretty small right now, because technology has forced that size to be smaller. Because at the end of the day, technology allows us to have these things called shopping lists, right? You can put it in a bucket and save it over here, and I don't have to interact with you for the next 2 years if I don't want to, but you have my history of behavior. So consequently, the burden for marketers to continue a dialogue in a very short space, in a very short period of time, is enormously filled with burden of content, right? And that the content has to have really kind of this massive amount of ability to move very fast, very nimbly, and that only happens with insights to build the content. So we flipped the model and said, let the insights, let the research, let the data first drive the fact of what and how you're going to say. The easy part is putting it into what I would call the media tactical plans and the channels. That's the easy part, right? And that I think we forget the importance of earned and shared media through all this. That is the most precious, precious gift that a marketer has. And this is really where the conversations are beginning now, as with this, what I call very tiny purchase funnel.
So how are we doing on measurement? You spoke at an Ad Week panel, I'll never forget it, and many of you are probably there, and you brought a people meter with you, right?
I brought a people, I had one.
You took us through right, where we've been, where we're going. How are we doing? What's the scorecard?
I think as an industry, we're moving in the right direction. I do think, though, and I already said the 2 words, I'm going to say them again, but as Google and Facebook get into this space in a much more, the 2 words, right? Because you can't ignore that and the momentum that they have in controlling some of the outcome of relationships and measurement, right? And I don't know, is anyone here from ESPN in the room? Okay, so a couple things. I was at your upfront this year, and it was the only upfront that I thought that really tactfully addressed cross-platform measurement, because it's live and because it's the one thing that every single viewer or listener they're passionate about their own brand, their own sports, what have you. But you've gotten into it to understand that you sit kind of in the middle between all these pre-programmed assets that we work with in live programming, and we're about to be in the craziness of the Olympics and elections, and so what you're doing right now is so applicable into this whole kind of live social element where Facebook and Google live, right? So from a measurement perspective, I think I've been watching both of those companies and really leading the conversation for us and almost steering us, right? Which is exciting.
How about walled gardens? Do you feel that there's enough sharing across and enough kind of comparability?
See, we're all in business here, right? All of us. You, me, all of us, right? So part of the walled garden approach is that, how much do I really want to give away and how much do I really want to share if it's not going to benefit? I know this sounds horrific.
Business.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's all about business. Yeah. Why do you think clients change agencies, right? It's not because they don't like the people. It's about the business. because the people haven't been able to affect the business. Happens all the time. And someone talked about this media palooza last year. I said it's just a giant dating game, right? That's what it comes down to, is finding the compatibility with the insights and the data, and how does it become transferable.
So I found this great quote with something that you wrote that said, the best way to cope with change is to help make it and make people flinch. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, flinch isn't a word a CEO really likes, or neither HR. But look,
we're unplugged.
We're unplugged. Just like clients hold all of us accountable, CEOs and leaders in organizations hold people accountable. And I think, this has been a big change for me from an operational perspective and a day-to-day sitting in a physical agency. Now, I don't know where I'm going to be kind of week to week, which is exciting, but it's making me flinch, right? And I think all of us from a career perspective,
yeah.
Because we are at it's not a tipping point.
Crossroads. Yeah.
We're at in a different trajectory in our business right now, and I really think that making yourself flinch is pretty healthy sometimes, because you never really know how good you are, and it's I think
what
again.
What does that mean exactly?
What does that mean?
Flinch. Yeah.
Flinch means like make me feel uncomfortable, make me think something I'm not able to think I'm able of thinking, right? If that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
And what we would call a chat at the end of the day between, the only thing standing between a glass of wine is me and Gal, right? Or Gal and I. And that, this is just raw conversation right here. And I think, events like this force you to stop and take your day and listen to others about experiences and insights, and how does it really matter in our industry? Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of watching Snapchat on the side with what Evan's been doing and all of that, and that's interesting because he's had every resource available to him in the globe to help him build a model. Mm-hmm. And now he's got a model that's going to take off, and you just kind of watch. What Colleen was saying about Viacom, right? Mm-hmm. Think about that's one in 40 media content companies that are struggling with that right now, and what's the next iteration, and what's in it for us down the road. Kind of a very interesting time for us, even from pure play publishing, and understanding how that's going to move in our industry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about volunteerism and diversity. And you have a perspective that taking a stand for volunteerism is a kind of part of your belief system. Speak about that a little bit. Why you think it's important as a complement to this. This is some tough business talk that we're having here, but how does that fit in, and how do you make time for it? How do you make it part of your values?
Look, somebody taught me well beside my parents. I mean, I was trained by some of the best in the industry, and someone believed in me and gave me a chance. And even 4 years ago, when there was no such thing as Havas, we were a bunch of dogs and cats and brands that lived together, kind of not. And they said, here, Lori, go do this, right? So when you go and do that, I believe in a great sense of gratitude. And this industry is flush with opportunity and resources. And I really think it's our responsibility to pass that on. We take as many interns as we possibly can. We have a global intern program where we share them in a LOS program where we actually exchange across the globe, so you learn about different cultures. Then you have to pay it forward inside the organization. Volunteerism, and obviously it starts first in our industry, because that's why organizations like this thrive, is because you have volunteers that give up their time and their talents. And most importantly, the thought, I spend a lot of time in a lot of the thought leadership on the site, and that's because you've been asked to do that, and we require employees to do that. I'm gonna call out Peter Solargic sitting over here, and Trish Miller on the right. These are the thinkers that have no P&Ls, right? And at the end of the day, their wisdom becomes a currency for us to work as an organization to get involved and volunteer and to give back. And I think there's so many opportunities in academia. We have a lot of proprietary relationships with USC Annenberg, with Kellogg at Northwestern, at Wharton, and working with kids that don't necessarily have the resources, but we can help out.
Yeah, you always, and you're so great about doing shout outs too. I think that's something others here can pick up about leadership. There's nothing, I mean, these guys are probably feeling pretty good right now, right?
Yeah,
You know, you can just be in a place where just giving any kind of tribute to someone that says, you know, I remember you, I remember what you've done that for me, you've done that for so many others. I don't think you ever get on a stage that you don't give a shout out to someone that
I didn't
brings
get
the
here
audience closer
alone.
together.
In being a woman, I'm over the age of 40-ish, right? So think about when I started in the business, I was a girl, and girls weren't really allowed to be in this business. And if you were either an administrative assistant or you were an assistant media planner, and you were going to stay as an assistant media planner for a long time, right? I worked on a brand called Eastern Airlines. It doesn't even exist. That's how old I am. But in the sense of someone believed in me when really this wasn't a business for women and minorities. And I really applaud a lot of men that believed in me and gave me opportunities. And my role as a leader, whether inside of North America or the globe, is to pay that forward and to recognize what's the next generation of a Gail or a Lori sitting up here. It's an incredibly important responsibility, and I take it pretty seriously.
Yes, things were different then. I'm going to play on both those points. This is like a Friday afternoon chat, but my first boss, who was the most remarkable mentor and who I learned so much from, also did give me his resume to type. And I did type it. I'm a terrible, terrible typist. I had my MBA. It was my first job at General Mills. And I left it on the Xerox machine. So that wasn't a very good idea for him to give it to me to type. But what ended up happening is, in that world that you and I were in at that point in time, and we were girls, someone picked it up, and they knew that I was the one that had typed it, and they brought it back to me, and they said,
I love
"Here, you left this on the Xerox machine, Cal. You might."
So I love how you used the brand Xerox, right? I still use the brand Lotus Notes 123.
Yeah.
Okay.
Copier.
And secret about Havas that we actually use Lotus Notes right now because IBM is one of our most favorite clients, and as you know, working in the whole cognitive development area right now, and that's the convergence that we're seeing right now with technology and media and content, what's happening with all of that. But I love how we brand, right? Did you have a Burroughs word processor?
Absolutely.
See? Okay. You probably had a telephone.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, a telephone, yes. We had telephones. Okay, so the future.
Yes.
What's going to happen in the future? Is it going to continue to get more and more and more complex, or are there going to be can we look forward to some shortcuts, some simplifications, some rules of the road?
Well, first, it's not going to get less
No.
complicated. No, I
agree.
can just tell you that by just walking over here today in less than an hour ago. Yes, it's much more complicated, and that becomes a much greater burden for us as what I would call the agency model. And I talked a little bit about earned and shared, but I think you're going to see really an opportunity for us to bring in some, different modes and methodologies of insights and how we garner insights and how do we actually take and transfer into marketing solutions. I also see that at least our opinion is, there's no such thing as digital. It is. The world is, right? So there's no such thing as a digital strategist. You're a strategist. I do believe that, it's going to become much more challenging to retain employees in a traditional pay model. So flexibility becomes paramount. And I'm not talking about time flexibility. I'm talking about just the way you function. We don't have any offices inside of Havas. We have glass. Everything is transparent. So working environments, and I think the agency as we know it today is not going to be here in the next couple of years.
What research? So for everyone here in the room, what's going to be needed? What are you going to need? What are you going to need from us? What do we need to bring to you?
Well, I think from
simplify, move the business forward, sell, create.
There's one thing that I know we talk about, we use this word kind of generically, but this matters, right? And that's speed. Because every client that we deal with, it doesn't matter if they spend $700 million or $10 million, their business is the most important factor at that point. And everything is fast, and everything is now, and everything is immediately, okay? And our business is 24/7. And I'm not saying that because I'm making it up. I live it, right? Business happens 24/7. So agencies have to be structured in order to really address all that. And it's not 9 to 5 or 8 to 4. It doesn't matter. It's all the time. And so you have to be able to address that speed, and on the same side, how we're structuring our people and our resources is to address that. And not all of you work that way, right? There's no such thing as a day off. There's no such thing as a holiday, and I don't mean that negatively. It's just that's the way the business is structured. So it's speed, it's agility, it's being nimble. I used to think that, I do see that the ability of bilingual employees becomes much more important as we scale size and work across continents. It helps move things along. And then I want to use the word loyalty. And it seems that so many young people today can jump for a few $1,000s here and there, but don't really understand the ramifications of loyalty in our industry. I'm a big believer in that, and the consistency of learning. And that's technically how I read a resume. Like, what's their hopping pattern? And if it's pretty predictable, their hopping pattern, yeah. I always say, like, I always have little notes, and HR knows this. I'm like, is it a hopper? Right? And they'll be like, right? And so you know that, right? Yep. But part of it is I think there's something to be said about people that plant some roots and learn and take some of that longevity and transfer it on to bigger and greater opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I stayed in the same job and for a really long time, but people changed around me, so my job changed because they were moving.
Yeah,
so that's a different.
That was a privilege.
It's a different generation.
Different generation, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that speed was something that has been spoken about. I wanted to share that. I know David Poltrak has spoken about speed, and certainly the cycle time in which they're coming out with new, very innovative research has shortened quite a bit. Christy Vance yesterday from Unilever talked about real-time research and literally breaking the research model, and it's fascinating. It's a very, very out there kind of vision and way of doing things. Yeah, well, investing in startups more
and I think Unilever's has a very interesting model. Gail Tifford and what they're doing from a paid media perspective. They're scalable. They've got brilliant brands that resonate, that move cross platforms seamlessly. They have an immense amount of insight on the consumer and about her. And I think the insight about the behavior of a female with discretionary income in 2016 is a pretty powerful notion right now. And clearly, just again coming off of the last couple of weeks of all the action in New York here post upfront, and it's been a good upfront. I mean, a lot of positives, and the go-to-market strategy, much more integrated and based on insights and trading and deal making on insights as opposed to what I would call an inventory approach. Right?
Yes. How about a question from the audience? Anybody have a question for Lori? Quick before we close.
No, it's because it's the bars open, right?
Otherwise,
no.
Otherwise, how about a closing statement, a closing argument? Or a prediction, or
I think
a send-off.
If I had the ability to talk to either Hillary or to Donald, right, at this point, there'd be a couple things that I would say from a seasoned media professional, right? It is called control mechanism, right? And that the control of their messaging right now is really up to them. And that what's happening is that it is such a push strategy, and you can just feel it right now in America. If I was them, I would have turned off everything since Sunday morning. I just think it's disgraceful that all this stuff is happening right now. I would have gone into absolute mode, and you can do that, right? And I believe that is what America is kind of saying right now, is that, life is happening, and all the drama over the election is overshadowing some really important things happening in our society. And we're watching that because clients are reacting to that right now. Clients want the nimble, agile approach to control their messaging and their marketing during times of great adversity. So that's kind of what's on the top of my mind. And then next week we're in Cannes, which is an interesting time. I work for a French company, and I don't speak French. So it's going to be an interesting week in Cannes, and I think you're going to see, you know, a lot of stuff happening in regards to some of the conversation that you've had up here already this week, which should be exciting. And then, you know, I'm looking forward to the fall together.
Absolutely. So, Lori Hiltz, let's give a great round of applause
Thank you.
for Lori Hiltz.